This is it, Jennifer. Your big break in TV. Welcome to prime time, bitch.
Welcome back, Daddies and Ghost Beaters. Today we're going to talk about something a little more abstract than I normally would be, and we're going to talk about Jason Blum, the CEO of Blumhouse Pictures, and of course his comments about Robert Englund. But before we do that, if you like this horror-related content, please drop a like and a comment below. It really does help the channel. Of course, smash that subscribe button, turn on the notification bell for all horror and Evil Dead-related content. And of course, if you're looking for people to play with in games, whether it be DBD, Evil Dead, upcoming Ghostbusters, or Texas Chainsaw, click on that link in the description below. We have a thriving horror community. Or if you just want to talk about horror stuff just like this, about what Jason Blum had to say. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Jason, he, like I said, is the CEO of Blumhouse Pictures, and he was in a conversation with Screen Rant a couple of days ago plugging his new movie, Black Phone, with Ethan Hawke. Now, Black Phone looks amazing. I want to see it so much. It's based on a Joe Hill short story, and Joe Hill is, in my opinion, the master of the short story. He takes after his dad very well. If you don't know, Joe Hill's father is Stephen King, and he builds a great horror world. And while Jason Blum was talking about Black Phone, he brought up Robert Englund. And, well, let's take a look at this quote here. So the quote from the interview went like this. In the interview with Screen Rant, the Black Phone producer, Jason Blum, comments on the possibility of getting Robert Englund to take up the bladed glove again, despite the actor being 75, saying, and I quote, "I could make him come back. I can get anyone back." Blum said it would be the first time he had gotten a veteran horror star to return to the franchise. Ellen Bernstein was 87. I got her back in The Exorcist. He said, before commenting that Englund's age isn't a problem at all, saying, yeah, he's 75. He's young. Englund had a long and illustrious career as Freddy in various roles, including recently appearing as Victor Creel in Stranger Things Season 4. Now, appearance in Stranger Things was great for that one episode, but would Freddy possibly be reprised by Robert Englund? That I don't know. Like, Robert's been pretty vocal, very much like Bruce Campbell, saying the age is just very hard to play that role, and I don't honestly think he'll come back. I don't think even Jason Blum's power could get him to come back to playing Freddy, unless it was like a pass the torch type of situation where they're basically going to kill off Freddy Krueger and pass the dream spirit on to someone else and make them the new killer of the franchise Nightmare on Elm Street. But it does lead me to something interesting. If he can convince Robert that playing or voicing Freddy again would be worth his time, could that possibly mean we could see, voicing it in video games such as Evil Dead the game? Could we see Freddy Krueger brought the original, not Freddy, not the crappy version we got from Jackie Earle Haley in Dead by Daylight, but the original Freddy? And not to take anything away from Jackie Earle Haley. I love Jackie Earle. I thought he was amazing as Rorschach in Watchmen, but he just doesn't scream Freddy. And sometimes there is an actor like Bruce Campbell with Ash or Robert Englund with Freddy Krueger that they just become so synonymous with the character, they're almost irreplaceable. And we see that you can't reboot those characters, but what you can do is you can reboot the franchise with a new character. So you can still do a Nightmare on Elm Street, but you gotta find a way for Freddy to pass the torch, and I think that might be what Jason Blum was up to. And on the other hand, we could see Robert Englund try to cash in on maybe playing Freddy Krueger again in something else, like a video game like Evil Dead. We all know the Cravens are much more easier to work with than, say, Victor Miller, so it's very possible they could make this work and reboot Nightmare on Elm Street both as a franchise and the films, which, I'll be honest, I love a Nightmare on Elm Street. I will say this, Nightmare on Elm Street was the first horror movie I ever saw and really turned me on to horror. And I've always put Freddy up on this pedestal as the paramount, the pinnacle of horror for me. And no matter what I see and whatever I take in, I still can't knock Freddy Krueger off. No offense to Evil Dead, because I love Evil Dead a lot. For me, Freddy just can't be knocked off. And I would love to see a way that Blum could convince Robert to reprise. I don't know if that'll happen. But even if it just plants to see that maybe getting Robert Englund to voice him in a video game line, let's be honest, we've seen lines in Evil Dead, and there's usually about 20 lines, which really shouldn't be too hard. You can get someone else to mocap. I still think we could see some form of Robert taking up the mantle one last time, but I don't know if he could handle a whole movie. So I think if Blum does convince him to come back for a film, it's not going to be the entire film. I think it'll be a passing the torch. On the other hand, I think it might pick up Robert's idea of maybe making some money doing a video game. So maybe that would in turn convince Robert that he could lend his voice one last time or continually to Freddy Krueger. And I honestly don't think there's a market for animated horror. Like, it's just not the same. I don't think there's a huge call for Robert to voice an animated Freddy, but video game horror is a horse of a different color, and I think we could easily see a welcome to primetime, bitch, via a video game. And so I think, even though I want Blum to be right, that he can get anyone, I honestly don't believe that is the case. But I could be wrong. Let's be honest, Ellen Burstyn in Exorcist didn't have the same demand that on her body that Freddy has for Robert Englund. So we'll see. Maybe they will. Maybe we'll get both. Maybe we'll get a new Nightmare on Elm Street and a guest appearance on Evil Dead. But I don't know. I think the second's probably more likely if Evil Dead wanted to go that way. But I think the movie itself is very slim. So keep the hopes up, Nightmare fans, but keep it tempered, because I really feel like that's highly unlikely. As always, thanks for watching, and later, mates.